It is the dream of quite a lot of people to be able to master any skill as fast as possible, things like learning a new language or playing a new instrument in the blink of an eye. Over the years, I have been mastering and learning quite a lot of different skills, things like magic tricks, various fighting sports and martial arts. I have developed skills in neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis and covert hypnosis during sessions. I have built my own business, and recently I have even been practicing a bit of music.
Though I need the lows, I pay no heed.
And my biggest conclusion after learning all those different skills is that mastering something is all about handling the downtimes. What do I mean by that? Basically, when you are learning something new, you are going to go through a learning curve similar to this one. You are going to have massive progress and massive motivation in the beginning, then you are going to lose a little bit of that motivation or progress less, plateau, then another bit of motivation or progress because you are learning something new or whatever, and on until you reach the final level you wanted. Another way of explaining that is that in the beginning everybody is waiting for this, everybody thinks that it is going to happen like that, you just start something and boom, you are there. Not quite, it's actually more like that. You are going to have one bit of progress and then plateau for a few weeks or a few months, while you still need to practice, and then another progress, and on and on. My biggest conclusion about how to master a skill faster and more efficiently is that you need to better calculate what you are going to do during those downtimes, removing as much as possible during your practice sessions, because in the end it all comes down to what are you doing when you practice. There are ways to practice efficiently and ways to practice while wasting your time. What you are doing when you practice is that you need to remove as many things as possible and build habits while you are on those uptime high moments, so that during the downtimes here, when you have less motivation or less imagination for what to do, you are going to make progress without thinking about it. So let's start with the main reason why you may not be making progress or why you may not get what you want right now. It is, do you have a big enough reason, a big enough why for why you want to learn that? The thing is, you have many things you may want to learn right now. Maybe there you have seen so many people on social media or people around you who look so cool because they can do this, they can do that, because they can speak 3 different languages, because they can play this instrument. Yeah, but what is, from all those things you are watching and interested in learning, which one is the one that is really going to bring something in your life? Because motivation has a huge impact on how fast you can learn and how long you will make progress and how long you will sustain. If you don't take something that is going to bring longer term benefits into your life, then you won't really sustain, or you will start and then you will just quit. So with this thing you want to learn, what are the longer term benefits you are going to get by mastering it? When you will be a master at that, will you get anything that you're not getting right now? And if the thing you will be getting is not really that relevant or that important, obviously you're not going to get the motivation to keep going. If you're never mastering that thing you want to master, will it remove anything in your life by not having it? Because if it is not any sort of pain of not having it, then same thing, your brain will have much less power, will do much less calculation to notice what are the key factors that are going to make you progress faster. So if in the case where you would really like to learn something that is not going to bring a massive achievement or massive improvement in your life, then wouldn't there be an easier way to achieve that? Wouldn't there be another easier method to get it? Now, presupposing that indeed the thing you want to learn, the skill you want to master is extremely important, and now you know why it is important because you have answered the big enough why. What is it related with? What is it connected to in your personal life, professional life, whatever? Then we are going to get into the strategy, the NLP strategy I have figured out over the years by applying NLP modeling and all those tricky things. The thing is about not how much can you add, but how much can you remove. because whatever you want to learn, there are going to be so many sources and so many books and so many teachers that obviously if you try to learn everything, you are going to waste a lot of time and you are going to procrastinate because you will feel overwhelmed by the quantity of things. So learning something new is always about how much can you remove, and the best method to do that is to first look at coaches, for example. Look and listen to coaches explaining and breaking down what you want to learn. Because when you listen to somebody who is used to teaching that thing, obviously he or she will have a way of explaining it that will allow you to dissect the 3 micro skills. For example, there might be 3, 4, 5, 7, whatever. Just what are the micro elements, the micro skills that are going to allow you to practice one by one. For example, if I take hypnosis and covert hypnosis that I have been teaching for years and years by now, what I can dissociate, how can I dissect it, is by explaining it as first the component of building rapport. How do you get the person to trust you? How do you build rapport? Then you have how do you articulate what the problem of that client is, and then there are all the tools, the different toolbox, the tool set, all the set of tools you have to make them change unconsciously. Those are 3 different areas that I can teach specifically, and if you are learning that right now, you can start by practicing only one of them, practicing only building rapport into your everyday conversations. Another example I have of that is music. Since I have started music recently, it is more fresh in my mind. I have noticed music could be dissected, at least at my level, into practicing the ear, practicing the being on tune, which my teacher is hitting his head on the wall with, because I still didn't master that, I know. But you can just practice the hearing, being on tune with the right la, li, all of that. Then you have the presence on stage when you are singing something. Is your face and your body adequately matching what the meaning of the words you are singing? Stuff like that. You can always dissect a big thing you want to learn into a series of micro skills, and the best way to do that is to look at coaches explaining what they to their students, or if you are a bit more advanced, directly you yourself watching an expert doing his thing and writing down how many smaller skills can you notice of what he's doing, how many smaller steps can you practice one by one instead of seeing that as a big massive block that you have to master right away. And the other reason to dissect the skill you want to learn into micro skills is that during your practice sessions you want to reduce them as much as possible to 30 minutes practice sessions. If you try to practice something for 5 hours a day, even if some social media BS right now is advocating this hustle culture of always doing more all the time, it is most likely a joke on the long term. Either people burn out or take drugs to sustain that rhythm. If you want to stay a normal human being and still learn skills faster, you are going to need to reduce the time you are practicing, because you probably don't have 5 hours every day to practice something, and it is not even required. All the skills I have mastered, most of them I didn't spend more than 1 hour per day maximum. So it's not so much about how many hours do you spend on it, it is how clever are you on the specific things you need to put into your practice session. The practice sessions you are going to do while being here, while being on the plateau, because when you are during a burst of motivation, it's not really relevant because you're so motivated that you do everything. But during those moments of plateaus where you don't really have the motivation, you want to reduce your practice sessions to super small chunks of time and make something very simple so that you don't have to overthink it and to always push so much willpower before taking action. So my question is, the main gap there is right now between you and the main model you can watch or the coach you can watch, the main gap there is right now, how can you practice it? How can you practice that thing you are not good at from all the micro skills you see from a role model? The one you really need to work on right now, if you had to reduce that in a 30 minutes session every 2 days, for example, how would you simplify it? How would you simplify it if you had to make it fit into a 30-minute session. And that will give you many ideas for how much can you remove, how many things are not essential, how many things will be essential when you will be at 5 years, 6 years, 10 years of practice. Those micro details will become essential. When you're just starting from scratch, they are just not. You just need the smallest components to practice with so that you start building the progress, and the more results you are getting into real life, the easier the motivation becomes. Now, during those practice sessions, the things you are going to do, you need to be in the right state. And the right state doesn't mean to always be in massive motivation, because obviously sometimes you won't be motivated, you won't have this incredible super crushed motivation. There are moments like any human being where you're just feeling low, you're just not feeling that great. However, if you want to keep practicing, it's not about pushing against your will to always be in pain and always pushing harder. I don't believe in that idea. I think over the long term, people who do that just get angry and burnt out and depressed. So I don't think it is the cleverest method. However, how can you understand the state of somebody who is already where you want to be? The state is the composition of their mental aspect and the physiology. When you watch somebody who is really great at that skill you want to learn, how do they breathe and how do they stand? What is their stance? Are they just slouched on the desk like this, or are they super pumped up like this? If it is an athlete, look at the small warm-up he's doing just before practicing. Warm-ups are very important. What are the things people are doing just before they practice their craft, just before they practice their skills? For example, if you practice an intellectual skill, probably your brain is not going to be super high uptime right away. You may need some time to really trigger the brain power. And the coffee, for example, or Red Bull could be good stimulators. I would still advocate to train yourself to get into those states without those added stimulations and keep them only for extreme moments. That's what I'm doing personally, because if you require on some external substance to get motivated all the time, you may drop the effects of those substances, the ones they have on your body and mind. So somebody who is already great at what you are doing, what is it that they are doing to warm up? During the whole time they were practicing their craft, their skills, what was it that they were doing that was simple enough to get them into the right state they needed to be into to practice? For example, when I was practicing hypnosis and covert hypnosis, I would have a client arriving in my house, and before they arrive, I would, take some couple deep breaths and condition myself to think I'm gonna bring the best value possible to this person. Whatever I'm gonna say, and I don't know yet what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna say, because everybody in hypnosis, when they come for a session, everybody's coming for something different. So I used to always condition myself, breathing this intention of I'm going to bring the best value I can to this person. And I would just repeat that a few times, and then the person would arrive and my brain would start firing up a lot of ideas about, oh, that person is like this, like that, I could say this, could say that. It's always about preconditioning yourself so that what you are doing during a practice session is as effective as possible. That's also why I said reduce your practice sessions to 30 minutes or maybe 1 hour, but as short as possible, because when you're practicing something while being in a very good positive state, you don't need to spend 5 hours a day practicing it. You only need 30 minutes a day, but on the long term, those progress will add up to each other, and it will be enough to create massive shortcuts in your brain so that you don't need to make as much effort down the road to accomplish this or that. Another way of explaining that is there a sequence of steps that somebody who has mastered it is going through. If you have access to a role model, or if you can ask questions to somebody online, you can ask them, what is the sequence you used to use when you were practicing that? And always ask them, what were you doing when you started practicing? Because if you ask an expert what he's doing right now, obviously you're not going to be able to reproduce what he's doing. Somebody who is just starting with hypnosis and NLP and asking me, for example, after 10 years, what I do during a session, I can tell him him, but what I do now is like way too advanced for somebody who is just starting. If somebody is just starting, I would give him the things I have been doing when I started. It's way easier that way than trying to reproduce right away what somebody who is an expert is doing after 5-10 years of practice. And finally, the most important aspect I think of all of that is to plan your sessions and your feedback. You see, recently I read a book called The Gap and the Gain, which really opened my mind on all of that. We are so bombarded every day about rapid success in everything that we tend to be subconsciously conditioned to think that if we are not getting rapid success in something, then we are doing it wrong, or we are missing, or we are just not talented enough, or whatever. Anybody who has been mastering something at a high level has been practicing it for, at the very extreme least, 4 or 5 years, extreme least. And 5 years provided they were practicing regularly and that they had some natural talents or like some intuitive understanding of that thing. Otherwise, it might be like 7-8 years before really reaching full mastery in something. And beyond mastery, you have exploration. You can always invent and design new things, but I will keep this video for mastery. It's already a pretty big topic. So how do you plan your sessions? I think that having a feedback mechanism is the most important thing. And this book, The Gap and the Gain, is advocating to always measure backward. So you never really measure your progress or your results based on the ideals you have for, that person, that role model, that expert, or that image I have of me succeeding is so far ahead in the future. And if I compare what I have been doing today to this, obviously I do feel like shit. That's what most people go through every day. They just compare themselves to the highest degree of mastery over there. If you start comparing yourself to what you have been doing where you were 2 months ago, if you always measure backward, so what good things have you done today, you will just build up the motivation, the self-esteem, because you will feel like you are making progress. And self-esteem is one of the biggest components too into maintaining your progress and your efforts on the long term. If you feel like shit and like a failure all day long, obviously it's going to be quite difficult to maintain that motivation over the years. Whereas if you always measure what you have been doing right, you can always maintain the motivation. So having a feedback mechanism, what do we mean by that is, for example, and always measure backward. What do we mean by that is always, whenever you have been practicing in something, after every practice session, or at least once per week or per month, let's say, you want to check all the actions you took and evaluate what have you been doing right, what can be improved. So the language here is really important because what you have been doing right, you always want to start with what you have been doing right. If you are starting with covert hypnosis or NLP and so far you are good at building rapport, but you don't know really how to get past the rapport phase or how to get your client to change during a session after you get past this rapport phase. Yes, okay, you're not there yet, we got it, but still elaborate and develop your understanding of what you are doing right. Because the more you write and notice what you are doing right, the more you are going to build up the self-esteem and the confidence to accomplish more. And that confidence and self-esteem is really what is going to propel you to test new things. And among those new things you are going to test, some breakthroughs are going to happen. But if you never test anything new because you feel like shit, because you are only comparing yourself to the highest ideal where you're not right now, then you will never really test anything new. You will always be scared and under pressure. So starting by the progress you have made or the things you are doing right is extremely important to build up that motivation, and that motivation will keep going even during those low times where you're not really efficient or captivated by what you do. Then what can be improved? The language again is very important. What can be improved is a refrain for where did I fail? Usually we're with school, thanks school, we are usually conditioned to think about failure. Like I didn't get the A+ or the 20 out of 20 or the highest grade, so I'm not good. Whereas if you, instead of noticing what you have been doing wrong, you frame that as what can be improved, where can I improve myself? So I am an NLP practitioner and I am not good at handling resistance. Okay, what can I improve? I can improve my flexibility in answering a person who is being resistant during a session. Always frame it as what can you improve and not as where did I fail, or what is my weak point, what are my weak points, or what are my weak spots. Those are the most tragic ways of explaining what you're doing and of viewing your situation. And the last one is, next time, what do I need to focus on? And only pick one thing. Only pick one thing so that you don't get overwhelmed by too many aspects, too many micro skills at the same time. As I said, one skill to master is a conception, is a result of many different micro steps, micro skills. And if you try to do all of them at the same time, it is overwhelming, it is stressful, and you're just gonna stop. Whereas if you only focus on one main thing based on the results you are getting right now and noticing, okay, the main thing I need to improve right now is this, handling resistance in NLP, practicing my ear, being on tune when I sing. You just notice that one thing and you practice only one at a time. And as I said, you reduce your practice sessions and you want to always stay in a positive state so you don't judge yourself too much when you're not accomplishing the highest results possible. One last advice is to record yourself as much as possible. Record yourself on video or get the feedback of somebody who is more advanced or somebody who is part of the audience you would like to touch by doing what you're doing. So if you're practicing music, go look for people who like listening to music. If you want to do NLP or hypnosis, go look for people who have problems and do practice sessions with them for free, for example, and ask them, do you feel better? If you don't charge them yet, then there is nothing you could fail at. So you can just ask them, and if they say no, ask them, okay, what would you have been needing from me to feel better? And that way you will just build, by getting a feedback, you will just build up your progress and your understanding of what can you do to progress faster. If you like those kinds of videos, you can subscribe and you can ask in the comments any questions you may have about those skill sets, those ideas, and I will make maybe more videos on that if you are interested.